Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website. I'm your host tonight. My name is William Hayashi, author, screenwriter, radio personality. Star of stage. I forgot about that. And this is our July 29th, 2016 edition. We're definitely, I guess they call it like the halfway point of summer. Our special guest tonight is Joey Pinkney, and he's an author and a self-professed chocoholic. I mean, I've mentioned that in my life. Because Joey, I'm lucky because I live right around the corner from a chocolate shop. So.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I got to be careful. Because it's just a walk. It's just a walk away. So welcome to the show, man. Good to hear you.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate y'all having me. Thanks, Jarvis Sheffield of Black Science Fiction Society, and thank you too, William Hayashi. I appreciate being on this show.
Oh man, and you even know how to pronounce my last name. This is just going to be so easy. Where are you coming to us from right now?
Right now, I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Nashville metropolitan area.
Okay, and then, did you grow up in the area, or are you a transplant?
I'm a transplant, but actually, I'm a retransplant, actually, because I went to college out here at MTSU, which is the college in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So I went to college out here for undergrad and grad, and now I'm back here living again.
And where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Memphis, born and raised, Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're kind of in your neighborhood. I mean, it's like me. I left here, went to other places, but they were all white. I just went to other places.
Right.
And now I'm back in Chicago. I like the city. I hate the weather. I don't want to bitch about it because it is what it is. That's like complaining about the winter is like complaining that water's wet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. But you know what? I will say this about summertime. This is my favorite season. I mean, I can handle being hot a whole lot better than I can handle being cold.
Yeah. See, I look at it the other way around. Once you take all your clothes off, that's about all you can do except find another air conditioner. One of the things that makes, and I'll just be honest about this, I'm a throwback to like the 70s. I still have a waterbed. And one of the cool things about a waterbed is when you get in, it's always warm. It's the temperature that you want it to be for whatever season you want. So that makes it a lot easier for me, being the old ass mofo that I am. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's jump right in. All right. I was looking at your Amazon page. You got a few books out there. You're obviously an author. Yes. And according to your own accolades, you're an award-winning author, so I'm even more impressed. But, I mean, you don't look very old. You don't sound very old. You're certainly not as old as me. But, I mean, when did you know early? Did you see early? I mean, when did this whole desire to be like an author kind of manifest itself in you? Because some people know, they go, oh, I've been telling stories since kindergarten. Or I've been telling stories since, whatever. And me, I started in 2001 and didn't know a damn thing about writing. And I just decided, I got an idea. Let me write a book. So, I mean, always there's a spectrum, where kind of people fall. What was it like for you when you decided, hey, I think I'm going to get serious and write something?
Actually, to answer that question, I would say very recently, probably within the last year. And the reason why I say that is because before then I was really toying around with the idea, and I did little stuff here and there, but nothing on a semi-consistent basis. And let's see. So about a year ago, I thought to myself, I was like, I've been promoting books for other authors for roughly about 10 years. And just to backtrack a little bit, I've been promoting books since the MySpace days back in 2006 and 2007. And actually I met Jarvis, I think around 2004 or 5, maybe 2003.
Okay.
Yeah, so up until that point, I would say my entry point really is, if we go back to back, kindergarten and elementary school, my entry point into being a writer was really being a reader. And I used to read everything from like junk mail to TV ads to books. And I would have to say one thing that really pushed me towards reading, or really opened up the avenue of reading to me, and actually me enjoying reading, was when my mom and dad used to buy me. You remember when you was in school and they used to give you that newsletter that had all the little books in it, and you could take it home.
Yeah, where you could check it off and get a book for cheap or whatever. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So I remember back then I used to like read Garfield and all that kind of stuff, and then slowly my love for reading kind of transferred into writing. Like even back in elementary school and middle school, I used to write like little poetry and stuff like that, but not really in a way of actually being a serious writer. But I've always had the love of reading, so that's one thing that kind of catapulted me into writing.
Man, for me it was kind of similar. My parents did have a lot of books around the house, and then they ran a game on us. I had a brother and a sister, and right outside the bathroom in the hallway was this big shelf of like research books, like Encyclopedia Britannica, Time Life Science and Nature Library and stuff. And so on your way in there, if you're going to be in there for a little while, you grab a book that's handy. And I did not, I swear to God, man, I didn't think about that until years and years and years after I left the house, about how that worked out for me. And then my dad was a sci-fi nut, so I get to read everything that he did. He was also a Lincoln nut. So I read his stuff. So it was kind of like, yes, your parents set you up if they're smart parents, and then the rest, if you've got an inquiring mind, if you've got curiosity, if you're bright, the rest of it takes care of itself. Because even now, I resent the fact that I can't read as much as I used to because I'm writing. I mean, are you like that at all? Do you still read a lot? What's today like for you in terms of how you can either do your craft or do the recreation of getting in some recreational reading?
I find it kind of like what you said. It's starting to get shorter and shorter for a lot of different reasons. One, because I am trying to write more, so I'm spending more time creating than consuming. But another thing is I try to limit what type of stuff I take in while I'm actually trying to write a story, because sometimes I found myself trying to incorporate things that I see in the story that I'm reading into the story that I'm writing at the wrong time. And once I have an idea of how I want the story to be told in terms of the feel of the story, I tend to stop reading as much. I tend to stop reading as much fiction, so I don't inadvertently throw my story off by trying to add too many different elements. After I've actually figured out what I want to do with the story. So
I'm like that
it kind of limits my reading.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No,
I don't like to do it because I read so much science fiction. I never want to have my work be derivative of somebody else's. I'm I'm paranoid about incorporating somebody else's ideas into what I write, especially if they're really really good. Because you want to steal from the best. If you're going to steal, you might as well steal from the best. That's right.
But then some, but like I was saying, man, sometimes it'll throw off what you actually have already set out to do with the story. And that's one thing that I'm kind of like you. I kind of get paranoid. Like I don't want to inadvertently take somebody else's style and incorporate it into my story just because I can see how certain things work.
Right. And so what were, when you were growing up, because we all have these different influences, what were kind of the influences that triggered your imagination? Like for me, obviously, it was sci-fi. I watched the original Outer Limits from under my parents' liquor cart because it scared the hell out of me. You know, but I couldn't not watch. I couldn't not watch it. I would turn it on and I would get under there. I don't know if I had a blanket or whatever. I've kind of blocked it out. But I mean, I saw those kind of TV shows in the Twilight Zone. There were 2 episodes, one from each of those that scared the hell out of me. Movies, movies were big. I went and saw Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea when it first came out, so I guess that was like 1959 or 60 or somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in there. What about you? When you were coming up, and then there was comic books too, what were the kinds of influences that maybe brought stories to life, or the things that you really, really liked?
I would say comic books and cartoons. Comic books like X-Men, Fantastic Four, the Wolverine miniseries and graphic novels. Also cartoons like Voltron, G.I. Joe, Transformers. You know, they kind of opened up my imagination, and also just reading different stories. You know, so those type of things influenced me. And another thing that now that I think about it is pretty interesting in terms of being an influence was my friends. Because I didn't think about, I'm just not thinking about it now, but a lot of them were creative people that were we were all making our own comics and drawing our own anime characters and things like that.
And so, did that, I honestly, I have to admit, I haven't read anything that you've written, but are those kinds of influences, did they follow you into helping you create, the kinds of short stories and novellas that you do now, your current, who you are now as a writer?
I would actually have to say those influences in terms of maybe some of the paranormal elements and some of maybe like the metaphysical elements of the storylines that I was creating and the storylines I was taking in from different cartoons and comics. But now I would have to say a lot of what shapes my writing and a lot of what influences my writings are just life experiences. Seeing other people live a lot of different things, live through and experience a lot of different things, and then myself experience a lot of different things. I think that kind of shadows my writing more so than abstract thinking.
Okay, all right. And when did you? You said you're recently, kind of like you're a nascent writer. You're getting into it right now. You got 5 books on up on Amazon, which I dumped into the put into the chat room for people who are looking. But all you have to do, if you want to look on Amazon, do a search on Amazon for Joey Pinkney, Pinkney. I spell it out because I feel like I'm not sounding like me because I'm getting over a cold. So you've got 5 novels out there already. When you started doing your first one, what was it that kind of pushed you over the threshold of being, helping other people do their own work, and then you deciding to go ahead and drop your own novel out on the public?
I think one thing was I've always been, I'll say since I've been promoting books, I've been writing stories here and there, or at least starting story ideas that I thought were great, but not handling the reality that it's actually hard to finish, a complete story and actually like to give your best effort. Sometimes you have to go through the ups and downs of like creative blocks. Sometimes you don't have the time when inspiration strikes, or sometimes you do have the time, but it's nothing coming to you. I guess that's the same thing as being having a creative block. In the past, I've started a lot of stuff and didn't finish anything, and that's why when you asked me the question, like when did I really become serious? That's why I said recently, like maybe like a year ago, because I just told myself I did not want to. I know, and I always say this is going to sound morbid when I say it, but it's the best way to express it. But about a year ago, I said I do not want to die without publishing these story ideas and actually seeing them through and putting them out there. And so that's what started me on this path of actually writing more, publishing, and also like interacting with readers and interacting with other authors in a capacity of from an author to author relationship.
You kind of like that fraternity of like-minded individuals?
Yeah, I would say yeah. It's always good to trade notes with people that are actually highly creative, but also highly open to other people's creativity. Yeah.
You don't always find authors like that. You know, a lot of authors are they jealously guard what they think is their territory. And it is interesting to see how they run that gamut, you know, who's more likely to talk to you, you know, professional to professional about authorship and publishing.
Right.
And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and also, there's so many different ways to approach being an author, and that's what sometimes it makes it difficult to actually qualify yourself as an author, because some people have they don't consider you an author unless you put out X amount of novels. They don't consider you an author unless you've done a certain quality of work by their standards, and that's one thing that kind of makes it easier to deal with people who are actually open creatively, because that way you can actually not only learn from them, but also teach them things that they might not, you know, from a different perspective. And that's one thing that I like about trading notes with authors and also other readers, because, you know, one thing I've noticed lately is that a lot of readers a lot of passionate readers are closet writers themselves.
Or would be if they either had the time or figured out a process. No, I think you're right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know, I came to it late, and I never thought I could do it. But then I said, you know, I got an idea. I mean, actually, this thought went through my mind when I was sitting on a snowy day. I said, no matter how many stories you have in your head, they don't exist until you put them down on paper. And that was a pretty strong revelation for me. Excuse me. Not just because it made me cross that threshold from being a reader. I mean, I've read tens of thousands of books, and you know, I love reading. I love watching other people's ideas unfold, and then I like people who can construct worlds of such complexity, but yet completely real. You know, you look at Frank Herbert's work for Dune, and you want to talk about political intrigue and things like that. I mean, that is just excellent. Or you talk about Isaac Asimov and how he created the roadmap for artificial intelligence in his robot series. You know, I'm supposed to be moderating a panel excuse me, at Mid-America Con in August on artificial intelligence, and you've got people out there who are supposed to be fairly smart people. You got Stephen Hawking, probably one of the smartest guys in the world. You have Elon Musk, you know, Tesla, whatever, SpaceX or whatever his rocket company is called, and you got Bill Gates, and they're all playing the paranoid nut role about how AI is going to be such a threat to us. Well, I could see Bill Gates being, you know, having that perspective. Anybody who writes an operating system where you have to use Control-Alt-Delete to get your ass out of trouble probably is worried about somebody writing AI that's going to be just as poorly written as Windows. Okay? But the thing is the imagination. I mean, I can't stress enough how brilliant Isaac Asimov's 4 laws of robotics, you know, the first 3 and then he added the 0th law, are for a roadmap to begin to do artificial intelligence successfully. So I think if we take time, and the thing is about futurists, sci-fi people, even Afrofuturists, when you look at how their minds work to construct worlds, and if people are fairly consistent and people are fairly careful, you know, the things that we imagine, eventually, the good ones, they end up things that we can use. And I think the best example is that Motorola Razr and Star Trek's communicator. I mean, could you see anything more perfect as an example of what futurism can produce?
Good point.
Yeah. Okay, so when you started thinking about when you got serious, as you put it, when you got serious and you thought about, okay, I'm going to apply some serious consideration and serious effort into doing this, how did you craft your first serious effort? Was it a matter of something that you had in your mind for a long time, or did you methodically map it out and put it together? Tell us a little bit about the first book that you actually produced.
Let's see. The first book I actually produced, I was actually in the process. My process, the way I got to my last book is kind of complicated. Also back in June 2009, maybe about 7 months before then, the beginning of 2009, late 2008, a publisher named Melissa Gabrielle of Peace in the Storm Publishing. She contacted me. And this is back in time when I was promoting authors on MySpace back then. She hit me up on MySpace and she told me that she had an anthology coming out, and she asked me if I wanted to be in it. It was called the Soul of a Man Anthology, and the concept behind it was black men being able to give a perspective on what it means to be black in America from a black male standpoint that's not normally seen in media and not normally spoken about. And so it had a lot of different authors in it. Some of them were like published authors. I was a book reviewer. There was another person. Her dad was. He has a passage in there also, and in that anthology also. He's a jazz musician. So it had a variety of black men in it. And the story that I wrote was called Like Father, Like Son. It was a short story about a stepfather who is trying to balance, trying to keep his stepson in line while his wife, who is the stepson's biological mom, is overprotective. And so he struggles with trying to be respectful to his wife, but also doing what's necessary to discipline his son. And the storyline came to me because I read, well, I'm saying but one of my favorite genres was urban fiction. So in a lot of urban fiction, I didn't see the storyline of the stepfather being told in any kind of logical, well, I'm not going to say logical, but most of the time it's in a negative light. The stepfather is like an antagonist of sorts in the story.
Sure.
And so I wanted to write a story that actually had the stepfather as a protagonist. Not to say there aren't any stories out there like that, but I've never come across any. And so I wanted. So that's what I want. That's what caused me to take that particular lane. That was back in 2009, and since then I've done a lot to promote other authors, but I've never really seriously took my own stories from beginning to finish, and actually putting them out there. So I started small, doing short stories, and actually that's the stage I'm in right now, where I'm mainly interested in writing short stories, shorter pieces of fiction. And I had my writing partner. Her name is Phaedra Dion Fields. She's the owner and operator of Solar Press Publishing, and she actually had a short story compilation series that featured different authors, short stories, and probably I think she did like 5 volumes, and I was in about 3 or 4 of them during the course of the run of the series. And at one point, she decided that she wanted to publish stories and do other publishing ventures, such as publishing her own stories and things like that. And when my stories that were in that anthology became unpublished, I started to come up with a plan to actually put them back on Amazon as short stories by themselves. And in the course of preparing that first story, I ended up coming up with an idea for a story around the same time I was actually doing research on how to, like some of the finer techniques of writing. I came across this 9-box plotting method that kind of made sense to me. And as I was learning about that, a story idea came to me, and I ended up plotting it out first instead of like just writing by the seat of my pants. Instead of being a pantser, I actually plotted it out first. And
right.
And this was one of the first stories in a long time that I actually liked. Like, some of the stuff that I've written in the past, I've kind of moved away from it because I guess in some senses I would say some stuff just self-doubt creeping in, and maybe the story ideas were good, but it was something about it that I didn't really like. But Cardinal Rule actually felt different to me. Like, it was something that at the time, it had been a couple of years since I actually like wrote something that I was passionate about actually finishing. And so that story came out August of last year, and it features it's basically like it's kind of like a romantic love story without the happy ending. It's it's a male and female date, a little ice cream date, and they're missing each other relationship-wise because they have different perspectives on what a relationship is and what they want out of a relationship and what they can get out of a relationship. And so I wanted the characters to kind of have a feel to them, so you kind of feel familiar with them. But when you put them two together, they click, but not all the way. So there's always like a couple of things missing in their relationship, which keeps them from actually being together. And that story, when it came to me, I pulled the male character. I pulled him from a story that I had published like 3 or 4 years ago in the anthology that I was telling you about. So even though I had that story in place and it was coming down the pipeline as one of the stories I was going to put out, I wrote a prequel of sorts that caught my attention to the point where I actually kind of put everything else to the side for a second and actually focused on, this is what I'm going to come out with. This is the publication. And not to say that, and not thinking like, oh, this is the best thing in the world, and as soon as I put it out there, it's going to make me a millionaire. But it was something that, as a piece of art that I feel like it was something that I was actually confident about. Like, even if nobody else got it, I knew that was a good story. And a lot of times that's hard for, I'm not going to call myself the artist, but, it's hard for a creative person sometimes to actually not have any doubts about some of the stuff they create. Because you want it to be good, but then sometimes, certain things are not clicking right. And you start to let self-doubt creep in, and you talk yourself out of, putting in front of people or taking criticism for it and stuff like that. And this particular story, I was just all in.
Well, there's two sides to that coin. I think, and this is not, I don't say this at all to, in derision, but I know a lot of authors who, when they get something published and they're convinced of its quality and it doesn't immediately propel them, into Oprah saying, everybody should read this book.
Right.
It's hard. I think the hard part about that is maintaining your own self-drive, your own confidence.
Yeah.
Because things take a while. Like, I know I wrote probably the best trilogy for the new millennium. All right, I know this. And the reason why I know this is because other people told me. But the problem is not enough other people have told me. I need about 10, 20, 30,000 other people to tell me. And no. And my expectations are realistic. Things take time, and lightning doesn't always strike. And the other thing that I have to be careful with is managing expectations and not getting angry when lightning strikes the stupid. Like, I'll say it, 50 Shades of Grey. Here's a piece of trash, a trashy fan fiction, not particularly well-written book, written on a BlackBerry, mind you. She wrote that thing on a BlackBerry. Wow. And so, of course, it takes off. Now, a lot of authors are resentful of that, but I understand the process. I understand the difficulty there is to get your work raised above the background noise level. Because, with electronic publishing and all of the aspects of the publishing industry today, there are something like between 1 or 9, I forget, some 9 million books are published a year. Or there was a year just recently. And when you have that many books being published, if you don't have a hefty marketing budget, like, the top 6 publishing companies will put out there for their works, it's tough. It's tough to get heard. But, I'm glad that you wrote something and you at least have the wherewithal to objectively, you sound like, see, here's the thing. You come off as reasonable. You come off as learned. You come off as, I would say, pretty self-aware. And so when you say that you wrote something that you put your heart and soul in that you really know is good, but you don't sound bitter, it sounds like you have a good handle on what the process is all about, what the world, what the environment of publishing is all about. For me, somebody put in the in the chat room, in quotes, when lightning strikes the stupid. Yes, understand that well. That is.
Where is the chat room, by the way?
Oh, here. Just go to here. You in front of your keyboard?
Yeah.
I'll take you right in there. www.talkshoe.com/TC/.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh, okay.
Hold on 1 second.
Do you have your computer in front of you? Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, I know.
All right,
I know. I apologize. Let me
it's
get
okay,
back on
Joey.
point.
Talkshoe.com/TC/127374. And then there'll be a prompt. Just go in as a guest so you can see what's going on. That way, when somebody drops something in there, you'll see it when I see it.
Okay.
Excuse me. I hate getting a cold, period. But getting one in the summer just seems obscene, man. It seems obscene.
It really does.
Why, when the weather is this nice, I'm going out there and I can barely chew the air because it's so humid, do I have to have stuffed up sinuses? And, you're not allowed to hit one of your volunteers for giving you a cold. You can't just come in there and smack them around. People start talking about you like you have no humanity.
But that does sound a little bit inhumane, but I do feel you, though. I really hate summer colds and stuff like that. Having a cold during the winter, that's a lot easier than when it's all hot and you're still stuffed up and you can't breathe and, you got...
Well, in the winter, you just take your hat off. Yeah, you take your hat off, you go outside, and all of a sudden your sinuses said, oh, that's what air feels like, but this is not the air I want to breathe. Okay, there you are. You're in there? Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you see we put your links in there already. But here's the deal. One of the things that people have to understand is, first of all, when you become an author, you have just started a business, And if you're lucky enough to have an umbrella corporation like, let's say, HarperCollins, to do your business under, that's great because they've got some marketing muscle and they pay for advertising. And, you don't get, I don't know who some of their top authors are, but let's say, like it was whatever, Jackie Collins. Well, you can have Jackie Collins on your shelves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you also have to take Joey Pinkney and William Hayashi and give them some in-cap time. That's the essence of the industry. And a lot of authors don't know that. And you do a lot of work with social networking, and we all know that the actual bottom line of social networking is screaming at your friends about stuff that they already know you did, okay, until you reach a certain threshold. When you reach a certain threshold, then you're letting people know, hey, I've got something new. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I say that to say that I think we all face the same challenges. For me, it's just a matter of being patient. I'm not always a patient person, but for something like this, I can be patient. I can be patient to let people find me because, like you, I have a certain confidence about the level of my work, the quality of my work. But it is hard sometimes. Sometimes you want to, one of the things that I made a deal with myself is I am not logging on to Amazon and seeing how many books I sold today and tomorrow. And tomorrow morning, and then I'm gonna check it again tomorrow night in case that's not. And I've got my clearinghouse or my what do they call them, fulfillment house call me all the time. Hey, don't you want to buy some books and put them in your trunk and go around wherever your car is and try to sell? I said, hell no, hell no. And sometimes that works to my benefit and sometimes it doesn't. People go, well, do you have any of your books on you? I go, no, I just pick it up at Amazon. When you looked at, because you started out from kind of like the editorial side of publishing, doing the kinds of things that you did, for reviewing and things like that. What describe how some people would reach your attention, who would get your attention, like you described the first woman who says, well, I got an anthology, blah, blah, blah. When you were in your heyday, how did you identify work that you wanted to either review or promote? Because I think people would like to know what piques someone in that position's interest, because that's always the challenge, getting those people interested in your work.
When I started out when I started out doing book reviews and eventually went into author interviews, trying to find a book, I used to work for this newspaper called the Urban Journal. It was a black newspaper, a black-owned newspaper in Nashville that served the black community in Nashville. It was had the largest circulation of all the smaller papers in Nashville. And while I was working there, I was assigned to do stuff like general like lifestyle articles, obituaries, community events, town hall meetings. And those are things that they were all right, but I wanted to do something like that would be interesting to the reader. And actually, I pitched the idea to the publisher, like, hey, let me do book reviews of books by black authors right now, because they are an underserved market and they have some pretty interesting books. And even though these authors don't live in Nashville and they serve a market other than Nashville, I think it would be real interesting. And he gave me a shot. He let me do a couple of book reviews. And what I did was I just looked online, looked at some of the other black newspapers, and I eventually, when I first started out, one of the things that was pretty interesting was that I didn't really get that many books. A lot of authors were kind of skittish about giving me books because they felt maybe before I came along, people were scamming them out of books saying, I'm a book marketer, I'm a book reviewer, and when they get books, they end up reselling them on Amazon. And so when I come along, a lot of them were kind of apprehensive because they hadn't heard of me. So I started working with these two companies. One was CMB Book Distribution, and the other one was the UrbanSource.com. And I started doing reviews for them. And so they were actually my first conduit in terms of what books I was pursuing, what books I was doing reviews of. But eventually, I started getting in contact with other authors outside of the authors and books that were sent to me by those two websites. And I branched out and started doing book reviews on my own website. And I ended up starting getting books at such a high rate that I couldn't read through them. Like I was getting like 3 to 4 books a week, and so I ended up with like 15 books, 15 books a month, and they started piling up on me, and I thought, like, hey, well, one thing that would be quick in order to get these authors promoted in a timely fashion would be to do author interviews. And I did that author interview series. It was a JoeyPinkney.com 5 minutes, 5 questions with author interview series. I did it for roughly about probably about 8 years straight. And from that author interview series, I learned a lot of different things about the writing process, other creative ideas in terms of marketing, ideas in terms of where you draw sources of inspiration, how to get over writer's block. And also in doing reviews, I was really getting a hands-on view of genres that I probably would have never touched had I not came across an author that wanted to get their book reviewed. And I was starting to read stuff like fantasy, romance. I even read some, I don't know what you call it, young adult, just a lot of different things, and also like urban fiction, Christian fiction, literary fiction. And it kind of broadened my horizons in a way that it let me know there's a lot of different things out there, but it also gave me a sense that there's room for the way that I want to build stories and the way that I want stories to be presented.
For yourself?
What it did was it let me know that my quirky sense of humor, the way that I put layers on different stories, just being creative and taking creative chances. And and I guess in some senses, taking a creative chance in the sense of telling the story the way I would tell it, as opposed to trying to figure out how you would best read it. Because in doing that, it opens the door to a lot of different things. And one thing it does is it can start becoming confusing because there's a lot of different. You can't please everybody. I guess that's the best way to say it. And since you can't please everybody, if you write towards write with an ideal reader in mind, like a composite reader, for your story, then you end up with a better story overall, mainly because you're not trying to please everybody, so you make the story have its own flavor.
Yeah, I sort of came around to that after a while, but most of my writing was out of fear because I was always scared some Tom Clancy techno weenie would read something in my story and then rip me a new one, and then I'd have to go, oh, man, how stupid was I? You know? Asked, do you think trying to go through college bookstores is a worthwhile effort? My first instinct for that question is no, because college students are so busy studying that I don't think they generally think about reading for pleasure until the semester's over. What's your take on that?
Well, I would have to say I do know a lot of people that are college students who are voracious readers. So
of course. Yeah.
You know, so I would say I guess it depends on how much you really like reading. You know, some people, they can't get enough of it, and they're constantly, you know, reading stuff on their Kindle, constantly having, you know, books, joining book clubs, and I would say I would respectfully beg to differ on that one, because I noticed that there's a lot of book discussions and book events on college campuses. So I would say it could possibly be a thriving market.
And I don't have anything to disagree. I just know that I was always so behind. No, I take that back. I wasn't behind. I was lazy. You know, I stacked my college, like I made sure I had all my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I had a nice long 4-day weekend.
Oh, okay. Shoot, man, those Tuesdays and Thursdays worked, you know, didn't it?
Yeah, it worked fine because, you know, so you get up at 8 and you go till, you know, 6, and then you got a day off to catch up with your notes and stuff from the previous day, and then you go another day for like 8 to 5 or 6, and then you got 4 days off. You know, I was in Green Bay, and I was still dating in Chicago with my stupid ass self. So, well, it's a long drive for. Well, yeah, but I mean, the thing is, everybody. I think that the challenge for every single author, especially self-published or small print or small imprint author, is is figuring out the best way to get exposure. And you want to not miss something. So obviously there's social media, there's college bookstores, there's libraries, there's trying to get it into school systems, or there are so many things. When you think about that portion of the business, and first of all, does this fall into my personal 80-20 rule, where 80% of what you do is in the service of doing business, and 20% of what you do is really the creative art side of what you're doing, the actual writing, editing, or painting or composing music or whatever. But like I said, when you decide to create something, you become an entrepreneur. When you look back at what you're doing now, today, not before, when you're doing promotions, when you were doing reviews and things like that, do you see it kind of breaking down like that? About 80% of what you do is in the service of trying to do business, and then, you still have to reserve that 20% for actually doing the creative part of what you're doing.
Actually, for me, it's kind of flipped around. Like right now, I am, I would like to believe I'm honing my craft and really like zeroing in on what my style and what my approach to writing is. And so I would have to say I'm doing more of that right now than day-to-day hardcore business of publishing and marketing and promoting and actually doing that. So like I'm right now, I'm in the stages of I've taken a break for a couple of days, but I'm in the stage of creating another story. And really the intensive part for me right now is the creative process. And and the reason being is because I want to there are certain things I'm trying to build creatively that I figured out that the more consistent I am with it and the more I try to press it forward, there will be a certain synergy between the different stories, which will start to gain me momentum on down the road. So I'm thinking really like long tail in terms of, I would even say long tail in terms of even moderate success. Like every new reader that I gain, every new reader that contacts me and that I get into a conversation with about some of the characters and situations that I've written about, that kind of puts me closer and closer to what I think will end up being, I would say, a moderate, if not better, financial success.
Okay. And we kind of glossed over this. When you were in school or even post education, what did you do, or if anything, in the service of your craft? Did you take classes in writing? Did you well, you mentioned that you like networking with other writers, but as far as the honing your process and the things that you're working on now, did you have any formal training in writing, in editing, in crafting of stories, anything that helps along the lines of getting your work done?
At this point, I have taken a couple of writing courses. I've done a lot of studying. Me and my writing partner, I was telling you about my writing partner earlier. When we have time, based on our work schedules, we try to catch up with each other once a day and actually read together something about either the business of publishing or the craft of writing, sometimes both. And, we'll read a small passage and we'll talk about it afterwards and talk about how it fits into what we're trying to do or how it doesn't, or how over the course of time things start to make sense differently as you start pulling in different pieces of information.
Sure.
That's one of the things that those are some of the things that I do to hone my craft. But I haven't taken a writing class since college, and that was back in early 2000. But right now, what I do is I guess I'll put it like this: I'm a lifelong learner. I'm an avid reader, so the reading doesn't stop. So I read articles. Sometimes you're scrolling through social media and some of your friends actually post interesting writing-related articles that they come across. You probably do that too. When I come across those articles, sometimes the intersection between time and opportunity is perfect to read about a certain thing, like maybe like self-editing or how to write tighter dialogue, or things that are actually something that you're concerned about or interested in knowing more about right then and there because of what your current project is. Those type things, like having hands-on learning and actually like reading and then directly applying it to a work in progress to make it better, are some of the things that I do. But to answer your question in terms of like actually doing something formally and academically, no.
And do you feel that you would have either that there's a lack there, or are you kind of ramping up your own personal competence? The way you prosecute your art are you at a satisfactory point for yourself, or do you see yourself as needing to know so much more, or and I say that kind of as an exaggeration, but some people are arrogant and think that I write so good I don't need any help whatsoever. And then there are those who are like you and probably me, where I think, or at least me, I think I can be better. Every time I try to be better, I try not to do things that are obviously that work against me as a writer, or to write in a weak way. Too much passive voice. How come all his characters have pointy heads, or whatever people think.
Right.
So, where are you at in how comfortable you are in plying your trade? Do you think you're in a pretty good place? And I understand you said you always want to get better, but if you were to self-evaluate, where do you think you are?
I would give myself, realistically, based on potential, factoring in potential also, I give myself like a B+. I think I do have like a whole grade, a letter grade worth of improvement to do. But I really do think that the stories that I'm creating and the way that I'm trying to present them in terms of like the pacing, the setting, the dialogue, I do think, I know it's above average. Like if the story end up feeling halfway like a dud or not really emotionally compelling, I wouldn't even go so far as to put it out there. So the stories I put out there, I actually do feel like they actually have meaning. They have the layers actually make sense. Little things are left jagged on purpose. I don't try to write perfect stories. I don't try to write perfect endings all the time. But I also know there's a lot of I'm open to a lot of room for growth. But I think it's got to be a dual process, like growing while also applying what you're learning. Like I don't want to get. I can easily. One of my problems is that I can absorb information all day, so I can keep reading and learning and really theorizing over how to like write sentences or how to get the pacing of a story right. But also in doing that, I don't want to do that so much where I actually don't have some type of semi-consistent output. So I think for me, it's kind of a little bit of both. Like I try to write things that I'm confident about putting out there, even if they're misunderstood. But then also I don't want to be. I guess it's got to be a duality there. In some senses, I really do feel like the stuff that I'm writing is good. Good meaning that if you take the time to open your mind up to it, that the average, most people would understand it, and a lot of people would like it. But that doesn't keep me from knowing that there are things out there that I need to refine, there are things out there I need to tighten, or even come into contact with and experience and learn. So I would say it's a little bit of both.
And when you're writing, do you get ongoing feedback as you're writing, or do you wait until you're done and then maybe do you have friends or certain people who I'm sorry?
I'm saying that's a great question. That's a great question because I actually have a great answer for that, or I think I do.
Okay. Cool.
When I first started writing, I used to be real open about like, yes, I got this story going on and blah blah blah, and I would explain it to people,
right.
anybody who would listen, but not like everybody. But I have certain literary friends, and they're like, yeah, so what you working on? So I started talking about the story, and slowly I started to realize that I jinx myself if I explain my work in progress too much before I get to a good close to final draft of the story.
Okay.
There is a superstitious. Some people might say it's superstitious. I feel like it's consistent. I jinx myself and I don't finish. For some reason, if I tell you too much about it, in the early stages, I never get to the end. I never finish it. I never complete it. So,
whoa! What's that mechanism? I mean, what's the mechanism? I mean, what?
I don't know, man.
Really? I mean,
it's consistent.
That's such an odd thing.
You know what? I'm going to explain like this. I think I really do have an answer for it. One thing about me is if I feel like there's something like real special in terms of like artwork or a story, and I feel like the wrong person likes it as much as I like it, then it diminishes the value of it. And I think that I know that with music, like there are certain like I can't listen to Sade with anybody. I got to listen to it by myself. Like I don't want to hear somebody who I don't feel really knows how deep those songs are. I don't want to hear them singing that. I don't want to know that they know about this. Because they don't know it the way I know it. I know that sounds kind of silly.
No,
but
I kind of get that.
It's stuff that I've drifted away from because people that I don't think should like it. And I'm like, I don't like that stuff anymore. I'm gonna move on to something else. And I think that's kind of similar. I think this whole me jinxing myself has some roots in that. Like if I tell you too much of it, then it's kind of like there isn't any anticipation, there isn't any surprise for me to work towards and finishing because you already know as much as I know about what's going to happen.
I kind of have the same feeling in a different area. Like for me, I know all the music from like 1955 until now. Okay, I know all that music. I can, in most cases, I can tell you what year something came out if you just tell me what it is. And there's certain things that I really like, and if I'm listening to it, and like if a friend says, I don't like that crap, blah, blah, blah. And first of all, I want to tag them in the eye. It's like, well, shut up. Nobody asked you. But the second thing is it kind of diminishes, and this is so foolish, in some way it diminishes the music to me because the value has been questioned. And you know what?
Yeah.
You said it. I just thought about it, and now I understand something about myself that I did not really pay attention to before, but I see what you mean. And then if you apply that to your own personal art, your writing, if you were a sculptor and somebody said, yeah, well, that's all right, but, ain't nobody look like that or whatever, just diminish it.
Yeah.
And I think what it does is it triggers a self-devaluation.
Yep, that's exactly what I was
saying. Man, I never thought about that. But you know what? I do understand it. And it makes perfect sense because you would definitely want if you think something's good, you would hope that all your friends had the exact same taste that you did because, of course, it validates your self-worth, it validates your judgment, it validates your value system. But, man, when you talk about art, when you talk about anything creative, reading, music, movies, TV shows, very few people have the exact same taste. There's a whole lot of people who like Game of Thrones, but they like it for different reasons. They like the political intrigue. They like, the backstabbing. They like the titties or whatever it is they want. Excuse me, I hope that didn't offend anybody. But whatever it is they want, a lot of people like it, but not for the same reason. And the same thing for The Matrix or any popular movie. People, I love that movie. I hated that movie. And there's a spectrum. So now I get it, dude. I really get it. it makes so much sense. I mean, thank you for bringing that out, and people should pay attention. Hang on a second. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show. A service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. Check out the website. We have got more content, more science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Black-themed content, art, music, people who are creating web series, people who are actually making things happen. We're also producing our own feature-length 3D animated movie as a collaborative project for people who are a member of the site. Check out the site. If you're picking this up as a podcast, which a whole lot of people are going to do after the middle of August, because I'm going to be paneling, moderating 3 panels at Mid-Americon where they vote for the Hugos, and I'm on 2 more, and then I'm going to be running around telling people about the fact that we have content that other people have never seen. It's as good as anything put out by the, quote, mainstream, unquote, sci-fi authors, and people should take a look because, instead of thinking of it as black-themed, science fiction, fantasy, and horror, think of it as good fantasy, science fiction, and horror that happens to either revolve around a black theme or have black characters. This is something I'm going to stress at the panel. I'm doing an Afrofuturism panel at Mid-Americon too, in Kansas City. I don't know how that's going to be. All I know is that it's going to be hot, sticky, nasty. So I'm going to stay inside a lot. But for those of you who may want to who are picking this up as a podcast and have not perused BSFS, which is what we call it for short, Black Science Fiction Society, take a look at all of the content there. So Joey, when you think in terms of what you're crafting now, the stories that you're putting together now, tell us where the intersection between sci-fi, fantasy, and horror meets what your work is, so that we can kind of bring it back around to that relevant theme.
Okay. I like to say I have not published anything in those genres yet. I publish mostly literary fiction and literary short stories.
Okay.
You know what? Before we move on, I wanted to finish answering that previous question, like in terms of
sure.
do you let your friends see it, and or do you keep it close to your chest? You remember when we were talking about how you kind of end up self-evaluating if you put your early idea out there to the wrong people. Right. One thing that I've been doing lately, when I wrote Cardinal Rule, it kind of put me in the mode of actually keeping my story ideas close until they actually were, I would say probably 80-85% what I would consider to be perfection. Okay. When you're writing, you can keep going on. Perfection is like this infinitely far.
It's a goal that keeps stepping infinitely further away the closer you get to it.
So once I get to about 85%, that's when I start sitting down with my writing partner. We go through the story, we read it, verbally, and we change stuff up, and we make sure, editing, spelling, grammar, punctuation, flow of the story, try to close up any gaps in the plot. And I don't let anybody read it until after we actually complete the process.
Sure.
But this last story that I'm working on, I actually changed up the process a little bit because Cardinal Rule and Swiggers, even though Swiggers was written like many years before Cardinal Rule, and Cardinal Rule happens in a time before Swiggers, so they kind of, I wrote them in reverse order in terms of where they are chronologically.
Okay.
The main character, his name is Teddy. This main character, I wrote a story about him when he was older, and then I also wrote a story about him when he was younger. And that attracted a certain readership. Like a certain readership, I would say, gravitated towards the stories, and they actually understood not only Teddy in two stages of his two different stages of his life, but also the supporting cast around Teddy in terms of some of the other side characters, and also the female lead in Cardinal Rule. For this story that I'm writing now, it's actually one of the side characters in Twiggers. I've actually taken her story and kind of fleshed out like what neighborhood and what time period all of this stuff transpires in. And I end up picking 11 beta readers from people that I knew. Some of them are like close family members that have kind of read the story, and we've actually sat down at one point or another and, you know, really talked about the story from beginning to end. And some of my other beta readers are actually either people that have read the story, left reviews, and actually contacted me afterwards and like, man, I really like this, and I wish that would have happened. Or people that I've come into contact with in terms of doing book promotion. So I took this group of 11 people, and I got this current story that I'm working on up to about like 85% perfection, and asked them, hey, would you read this, break it down, see if you like it, tell me what you like, what you don't like, tell me if it's good or bad, or what do you see in it. And the reason why I picked these people is because one way or another they get the story. They get certain aspects of the story. Maybe not everybody gets all of it, but it's cool that they don't, because I didn't necessarily write it for each and every person that I picked to be a beta reader. So I've done that, and now what I'm doing now is I'm in the process of looking at all the notes that I've gotten back from these people. And I'm going to slowly start pushing certain ideas together and seeing where I can incorporate those into the story if I need to, or if I need to change up a couple things to actually make some of the questions that I came across smooth over. But then, to be honest with you, there are certain things that pop up that I just don't want to change. So, you know, I guess it's partially being stubborn or thinking that like I have this long-term vision that's just not being seen yet. You know, I don't know if that sounds crazy or not, but it's certain things that I'm just going to...
No, it does. It sounds very smart. I'll tell you why. I go through the same process. You know, I pick my beta readers depending upon what my work is. You know, in my latest manuscript, and you know, somebody's going to eventually find out. But I wrote a manuscript about what it takes to make white cops quit shooting innocent and unarmed black people, and it really contains the only way forward, the only thing that could happen that will stop that. It's ugly, it's heinous, but it's necessary. And so I picked two beta readers. I picked actually one of the members on our site, Ronald T. Jones. He read the manuscript and he said he loved it. And then I picked a male Jewish psychologist, because he would read it from a white perspective. He would also look at the sociology and the psychology of the story itself. And so, you know, I've gotten to the point now where I've gotten smart about picking who's going to be the beta reader so that I could listen to their voice talking about my voice. You know what I mean? And I think this makes me a better writer, and it also makes me smarter about crafting a story and then marketing it. Because if you want to have a certain amount of appeal, you know, there are a lot of black authors who only want black folks to read their work. I'm different. I would like to have a more universal audience for my work, even though it is black themed. So, you know, even the process of picking beta readers, just like what you said, is a really important business process for publication and for crafting a story. And it's not enough just to let your grandmother read it, and it's not enough just to let your friends read it. I think that in the service of doing business, you have to be smarter than that. I mean, that's just my feeling. Tell the people a little bit, you know, from the external. Let's go back to before you did your own story. Tell people a little bit about the external part of putting together your, what you, the kinds of process you had for reviewing and choosing what to review. I like the fact that you actually came out and said, I reviewed stuff that I never would have read otherwise, and a lot of people don't do that. So I have a healthy respect for that, Joey. But
yeah.
tell people how you looked at something and what was your process of review. Did you look at characters? Did you look? I mean, obviously you looked at the gestalt of the story, but run through your process so people can kind of get a look at where the rubber meets the road.
I would say a couple of different things. One thing I would do is I would try not to let the book cover get in the way of my first impression. There's certain stories that have great book covers and the stories are not that good. But then there's also these other hidden gems that have these terrible book covers and these great, compelling stories. And even if they're like mechanically unsound in a couple places, like maybe the grammar isn't all the way tight, spelling and punctuation has issues, but the core story, the portrayal of the characters, the dialogues, and the ups and downs that the characters go through are make for a good story. What I would do, I would give authors that presented me with their books, since I was doing book reviews as a professional service, as long as it didn't go completely outside as long as it wasn't completely obscene to a degree that's just ridiculous. I was pretty open to read a lot of different things, and
sure.
Like I was saying earlier, like my favorite genre is urban fiction, but I would read. I've read gay and lesbian books. I've read Christian fiction. I've read books that I can't really even say that they fall in any real category, any mainstream category. I've read fantasy books, and in doing so, one thing I try to do was give each book a fair shot at really pulling me into the dialogue, really pulling me into the voice of the narrator. Really having listening to some of your shows. One of the things that I noticed that one thing that you said that makes a lot of sense to me is that even though it's conventional wisdom that there's nothing new under the sun in terms of stories being told, you respectfully beg to differ in the sense that you have a high level of creativity where you actually come up with new story ideas and new spins and twists on things that haven't necessarily been expressed before or never been done. And those are things that I wanted to, that I opened myself up to seeing in some of these stories. And even if at first it wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to read about or
wasn't in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, or maybe even, exactly, wasn't in my wheelhouse in terms of just being conceptually outside of my experience. That's where I guess the nerd kicks in, and I actually took time to try to figure out. I would do research on. All right, so what is this genre? What genre does this book fall in? I guess you can find that on a lot of websites. Like, if somebody gave me a book and I really couldn't figure out where it sat on the spectrum of genres, I would actually go to Amazon, look at some of the genres and subgenres it will fall in, and go to Google, or maybe even go directly to Wikipedia and look up those genres and actually read about them so I can get a gist of what direction the story is supposed to be going in. Not necessarily reading reviews and studying the book description so I can figure out what the plot of the story is, because I wanted to find that out by reading it. But
sure.
Understanding the canon in which it was trying to be expressed. If romance, fantasy romance, and fantasy, they can take on three different storylines and be completely different from each other. And so in studying that and looking at the book and giving it a fair shot, I really just try to make myself as open as possible. And there were some things that was absolutely terrible, that I come across in the process. But then again, there was some other stuff that was just really struck a chord with me. And that helped shape, my approach to writing, because I don't necessarily write like some of my favorite authors, but I do try to have some type of emotional impact or some type of intellectual impact, on the reader with the stories I write.
Okay. Have you heard about that website called I Write Like?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Okay, it's a website where you take you take up to a chapter of your book, drop it in to be analyzed, and it tells you what author, what mainstream author your style is most like.
Really? Have you tried that?
Yeah, I usually come up with Arthur C. Clarke or Isaac Asimov. One time I put in a short snippet, and something came up Stephen King, and I was really bummed because Stephen King writes like a 14-year-old. Yeah, I said it. Somebody had to say it.
Oh, wow.
But yeah,
okay.
I mean,
okay.
And what it did was, I didn't do it for the ego, because I can't imagine my ego getting much larger. I have to live in a big city in order to support it, anyway. but I do it to reassure myself that my writing skills are comparable to other people who I respect. There's really not another way to get that kind of information or that kind of feedback except for, in-depth reviews of what I've written and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's another tool, too. It's a tool to let you know, well, gee, I didn't know I wrote like Nathaniel Hawthorne or, whatever. And then I think for the new writer, it might even give them a little boost. Oh, well, I'm new. This is my first thing. Let me check this out. I got a short story. Let me drop, 5 or 6 paragraphs in here. So it's called I Write Like. So just do the Google search on that.
Okay.
And that's a fun place. It's a fun place to just drop your stuff in.
Okay.
And we all. I mean, the internet is huge. I mean, there's so much on there. There's so much stuff. And, obviously wading through the crap to get to the good stuff is not easy. But I don't think that any good author these days is an island. Remember
right.
let's go back a generation, maybe 2 generations, where the prevailing view of a great author like a Hemingway was sitting in a room by themselves and with no distractions, and everybody stay the hell away from me, and blah, 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 blah. And that's how they plied their trade. That's how they put it all together, or at least that's traditionally how it was. For me, I have to admit that I built custom computers, and I built one that has 2 screens. I may actually add a 3rd screen. And so I've got the internet open on one screen. I've got WordPerfect on another. Yeah, I'm a real writer. I don't use Word. And other, and I got all kinds of things open because I want to be better. And I am not the final arbiter of how to write. I am not the final arbiter of storytelling. I am not the final arbiter of putting together a plot, even though I've been very, very fortunate in looking for and crafting plots that had not been done before.
Yeah.
But you need help if for no other reason than to find out that you're not out there by yourself. I think it's a very, very cool tool. And like you said, being able to relate to other artists, other writers who do what you do and whom you may respect, that's a huge thing. I mean, I'm going to be so lucky going to Mid-Americon because there are going to be some of the authors, somebody put in there, didn't know WordPerfect is still available. No, well, the good stuff. Anyway. But it's actually a much better program for crafting a book than Word because it is written for writers. When I go to Mid-Americon, I'm going to meet some of my damn heroes. People who even going back to the golden age of science fiction. My dad had, I've told this story before, but this is a short version. My dad had a subscription to Analog magazine as far back as I can remember, and I've read all but a handful. I may have missed 30 in over 50 years. Okay, that's not a lot.
What's Analog magazine?
Analog is a science fiction magazine. Its counterpart counterpart is Asimov's, and before that it was Amazing Tales, and then remember Omni came out for a little while. What's his name? Guccione decided he was going to dabble in sci-fi. And I read so much, but it's a rare instance when I run into an author, someone like you who wants to write at that level where their storytelling is compelling. That's what I want. I want my stories to be compelling. I want when people read them, I want them, to get invested in the characters and want to see where they're going where they're going and what are they doing and that for me creatively, that's where the rubber hits the road, because there's no other measurement, no other yardstick for measuring how well I'm doing what I'm doing, except to hear from other people who have read my work and said, I like this. When's the next one coming out? That sort of thing. So I get some feedback like, I don't know, like, the reviews on Amazon. I got a bunch of reviews on Amazon. And so I look at them and they're like all 4 and 5 stars, except for 1 star. We'll talk about that later, maybe. And so that's at this time, and the people at BSFS who have read my work, that's the feedback that I get for whether I'm writing well. And then, I don't get much feedback. I pick my beta readers from a business perspective. So when I listen to their feedback, I'm listening to procedural things. And if they like the story, they'll tell me that. But again, there's 2 challenges. One, finding all the people who read my stuff to find out, because I really want to know what they thought. And the other one is finding more people who will read my stuff. And I think that's the biggest challenge for any new author who doesn't have the good fortune to have one of the top 10 or 15 or so publishing companies take their work and move it through the system and get it out to the public. For you, what's your biggest challenge for visibility of of your work, Joey?
I would say the biggest challenge for me would be, I guess being for me right now, it's being consistent and coming up with new graphics and new ads for some of the stuff that I've written previously. Like my last story came out in March, and I spent probably like a month building a promo campaign for it. But one of my things is I need to kind of refresh that and refresh some of the older stories too. I guess another big barrier that a lot of authors face is the low number of reviews. Like I get a lot of people that actually tell me, that we'll chat on like Facebook Messenger or an email or maybe even sometimes in like a Twitter direct message about their impressions of my story, but in terms of them actually leaving reviews so that people can have that social proof that the story is actually good without actually having to take the chance on reading themselves. I think that lack of high number of reviews is one of my challenges right now, and it's something that I have put some thought to, on like some of the ways that I plan on getting those numbers up, and also just riding the wave of publication. So so it's kind of twofold. One is being consistent in coming up with new ideas in terms of marketing and refreshing some of the older marketing materials, and then also trying to get those reviews ramped up so that to serve a dual purpose. In these digital marketplaces, those reviews actually kick in algorithms that put your books on lists or maybe even ads within the website itself, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble, in ways that books with low reviews don't get. So that's one thing. But also, like I was saying, on a gaining a new reader level, just having the number of reviews so that readers can actually go through those and see what makes sense to them and see if that's something they even want to look into. But with a lack of reviews, that's just not possible.
Yeah, people tend to really want to see what other people thought, what other people say, and there is a herd mentality because at least in my case, my books are expensive. They sell for like $20 a piece, maybe even more. I don't know. I have no control over that. I'm getting ready to release digital versions of all of them since the trilogy has been out now. But other than I think reviews are the most compelling thing that people look at when they're trying to decide to try something new. So someone mentioned here they didn't know the connection between algorithms and reviews, but it's out there.
Yeah.
Amazon.
I think the magic number is like 50, right? I've read in a couple places like once you get like 50 reviews on Amazon, well, they can't be bad reviews, but I would say like mostly 4 and 5 star reviews with a couple 3s here and there. Once you get up to like 50 of those, it kicks it in. Like the story, that particular publication starts to get noticed more by Amazon, and the reason being the idea behind that is if it's getting reader engagement on that level,
right,
and it's got to be genuine reader engagement because they do a lot of checks to make sure that you're not putting up 20 reviews just by going
making a new identity and doing it. Yeah, they're pretty good.
Stuff,
they're pretty good at filtering that out. Remember about what was it, 3 or 4 years ago they started nailing all of these people who did paid reviews. And I asked other people. I've gotten notices from other people because they keep an eye out. Amazon. I have about I have 33 reviews for my first book, and so every now and then Amazon sends out, based on your preferences in science fiction, blah 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 blah. We recommend the following. They send that out periodically to the membership, the people who are registered with Amazon. And my first book gets that maybe 3 or 4 times a year. So I've got 33 reviews. So I think that obviously Amazon has its own algorithms and its thresholds. So reaching that honestly, Amazon considers a milestone, and then you get benefit from there. But how does a new person do that? That's really tough.
Right.
You would have to get, let's say 35 legitimate reviews from your friends and family and people who know you in order to hop up that way. I mean, I think Discovery went on
the easiest way to do that?
What's that?
The easiest way to do that is to come up with to think of a number, like how many no's do you think you would have to get in order to get 50 reviews? And then just go hardcore at it and just really ask as many people as it takes to get those, that many reviews. And it takes the number. Being persistent and consistent with that.
We've worked out that number. It's between 3 and 5%. 3 and 5%. Okay. Is your yes response rate if you're going to really push people to do that. So
what would it be for 50 reviews? How many no's or how many?
Well, no, I'm just saying. No. Okay, let's say up to about 100. It ends up being, and I think the people who have the best handle on that are telemarketers. They know exactly when they put together a program exactly what the response level is going to be, and then they just hire all these drones to make all these phone calls in order to make that number happen. Okay, and so if you're going to look at that for your own published works, then the best place to look is not Amazon, but it's to look at people who work the numbers for a living. And the people who work the numbers for a living are telemarketers, because everything that they do is based on response algorithms. And you know what? A lot of people don't have 50 friends who read books.
Yeah. That's one thing you really have to be cognizant of. You're not going to get 50 reviews from your friends unless you're just like a socialite or something. Most people, and especially like most creative people, they're not like extroverts like that. They're more introverts and more brooding. So they probably wouldn't even know 50 people that they can genuinely ask that would be sincerely interested in giving a good review. You know, so you're really going to have to step outside of your circle of family and friends if you're going to really go for that magic number. And that's one thing I think we all kind of know. You gotta get into that stretch zone where you're actually kind of putting yourself out there a little bit and taking a couple of knocks along the way in order to build up to those different plateaus.
And let's be honest, even if you had 50 friends who might want to write a review, those 50 friends may not all know how to write a good review. You know?
Right.
That's the other thing. You want to have your reviews be compelling for other readers, and not everybody writes that well. So yeah, I mean the challenges are all around the block at every turn. In order to become a best-selling author, unless you're fortunate enough to get the lightning to strike you, there are challenges at every turn, and you could spend a lifetime. You know, I'll be honest with you. The thing that I fear the most is, you know, I'm not going to be well regarded or have a lot of people think that I wrote good work until after I die. That would kind of piss me off, just because of the timing of it. And the thing that I've really schooled myself into doing is being patient. You know, I think above everything else, you have to be patient.
Yeah. Patient and focused. You know what I'm saying? Like while you're waiting on this ideal situation to present itself, you still have to be focused on meeting it halfway. You know, you still have to be pushing yourself forward. And I think that's it's easier said than done for a lot of people. But I think the people that actually end up reaching success, and we see it in the music industry. Well, I see it in the music industry a lot, where you have these quote unquote overnight successes, and when you really look at their story, they've been working at it for 10, 15, 20 years. You know, and they might have achieved, it might have come on your radar as of late, but they've really been putting a lot of time and effort into their craft, and they've been patient and waiting their turn. You know, and to what you said, that's exactly what it takes if you're going to be in it for the long haul, and not being blessed to like hit that literary lottery where you have a fan fiction book turn into a movie and a sequel and who knows what else, you know, all this movie coverage, media coverage, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, and the thing about perseverance is right. You know, I was just thinking of somebody, what was his name? Luther Vandross. You know, huge talent. And yet I'm just going to drop a link in the chat room because on that song that's on YouTube that I just dropped in there, Luther's singing background vocals. You know, this is the first time he got on a record. You know, in 1980, and so you know, here's a guy who sang background vocals on this one track, and who knows who heard him. And so the same thing can happen to your book. Who knows when somebody is going to go, you know, that guy, he wrote that thing, you know, about that thing, and then, you know, it drums up something, and then all of a sudden that's the lightning that hits you. You know, and what we all want to do is we all want to build the biggest damn lightning rod possible so that we're ready for the lightning to hit, but it's still hit or miss. You know, it may not rain. You may not get the storm, you know, but the other thing I think that you said much earlier is, you know, even though that doesn't happen as at the drop of a hat, you can't stop. You have to keep going. You can't, excuse me, you can't take the reaction to your first outing and use that as the gospel for whether you should live or die or move forward or not. If you truly have the love of writing, and like you said earlier, if you truly have the love of reading as a writer, it's incumbent upon you to keep trying. because you never know where that lightning may strike, or maybe it's a groundswell, a slow groundswell. All of a sudden these people in this group find your work, and then they tell somebody, and then they tell somebody, and then they tell somebody, and it goes a lot slower than you want. I tell this joke, but it's not a joke. I started writing Discovery in 2001, and I talked to a lot of writers. I networked with a lot of writers here in Chicago. I apologize for the coughing. And universally, all these black writers I met, this was their business model. I'm going to write me a book, and then I'm going to get Oprah to put it in her book club. That was their entire business model. That's as stupid as relying on the lottery as your retirement plan. And then when I informed them that a 28-year-old white lady read all Oprah's books for her, then they looked at me like, what? She doesn't read all the books? I said, this tells me how unprepared you are for your own success. And that's the other thing. Since 2001, I've been, I don't want to talk too much about me, but this is something that I've done. I've been watching my life since 2001 when I wrote Discovery. And I've been watching what the differences are in my life because I became a writer. And I'm paying attention to them because what if lightning strikes? What if Warner Brothers looked at my first book, but they wanted to see
really?
What if they come back? Well, yeah. But when they heard that it was Advanced Blacks on the Moon, and I was stupid enough to put Volume 1 of the Dark Side Trilogy on the first book, they want to know what's in that third book. They don't want a whole bunch of black folks coming back to America killing all the white people, because Warner Brothers would rightly so think that was a bad investment. But what if lightning strikes me? I'm paying attention. I don't want to take it for granted. And I also have a good idea of the hard work we all have to put in order to try to give the best possible chance for our success and even for my success. Part of it, I do this show. People discover the show. They find a writer. They go and they take a look. If anybody wants to look at something really, really funny, this was brought up to my attention a little while ago. Put my name into Google. Put William Hayashi into Google and take a look at it. And then you try to tell me what the hell kind of algorithm produces what you see on the page. I've been trying to figure it out for about 3 weeks now, and I can't figure it out. But I am so lucky because if somebody like at Mid-American puts my name in and says, oh, well, what's he writing? Or they go to Amazon, I have a great profile. But even that's just one of those little things that you do to try to maximize the possibility for success. And when you look, let's look 5 or 10 years down the road for you. Let's figure, given how prolific you are, you're probably going to have at least 15 books out by then. All right? And so having 15 books out by then, what do you think you're going to be doing to try to manifest the lightning to strike if it hasn't already done so? You know what I'm saying? If you're that far down the road, I know, first of all, Joey, I know you're not going to give up because you're just a stubborn son of a bitch. But when you go 10 more years down the road, or 15 more years down the road, can you imagine what you might be doing? Or you're probably still going to be plugging away. Are you still going to be doing the same things to try to maximize your success? I am. I'm going to do the same things I'm doing today, unless like some new paradigm comes in. A new social networking paradigm or something like that. But I still think I'm going to be doing the kind of marketing that I'm doing now, except maybe doing a few more ad buys for ads. What about you?
Similarly, I think I'll be doing some of the same things, like really creating, attempting to create some real, highly realistic characters, coming up with some zany situations to put them in, cross-pollinating my stories with reoccurring characters, really trying to be in tune.
People have a buy-in on your characters, right? You want people to get in love with, yeah.
And then on top of that, I have a buy-in too. I have a buy-in. It's a two-way situation because it as these one thing that's helped me keep going is the fact that the world that I've created for one character has expanded into 3 separate stories, 2 of which actually happen in the same place, and it gives me the opportunity to see the potential for growth in terms of complexity. In terms of diversity of characters, and not necessarily like racially diverse, but diverse in well, I'm not even speaking against being having a set of racially diverse characters, but having attitude diverse characters, if that makes sense. Like exploring some of the attitudes and behaviors that people have that might not necessarily be traditional, but in their own kind of way make sense. I think I'll still be trying to write those type of stories 10, 15 years down the road. And not only that, but like maybe in working with like the Black Science Fiction Society and coming across a lot of people that are doing digital animation, live action, film, just branching out into other medias and other ways of telling stories also. Like even yourself being an award-winning screenwriter, like being able to pick your brain and seeing like how can I transfer what I feel like is my skills as a writer into being a screenwriter. So, but still, the core will still be building those complex characters and those situations that people can relate to.
Sure. And you know what? The other thing that I want to talk to you about is, you know from hanging out at BSFS, there's a lot of us there who I have no problem sharing, helping, and mentoring new talent, other talent, and sharing of ideas. To me, that kind of outreach is important. I can't at all state that I got where I am today on my own. I had people who, when I was writing my first book, who should have seen me on caller ID and said, "I'm not talking to that knucklehead anymore. All he does is read his stuff to me," or that sort of thing. I think it's important for us to mentor other people because we're doing 2 things. One is we're broadening the reach of our Black-themed works. And I mean that's just a kind of a really blanket way of saying it. But the other thing that we're doing is I believe that we're also growing our future customers, readers, art curators, people who are going to be checking out the web series and giving them those hits on YouTube and things like that. I think that's a highly important part that people tend to overlook, is that what we're doing is we're growing our own audience. We can't count on someone else to come along and say, "Oh, Afrofuturism, let's just drop this right into the Hugo Awards." Well, that shit ain't gonna. Excuse me, that's not gonna happen. Right. Because let's be honest, writers are desperate little creatures. Any artist is a desperate little creature at heart because they want validation. And they want, they're doing it for a purpose. They want to sell their books. They want to sell their art. They want eyes to check out their web series so that they can maybe get, a contract with Netflix or something like that. We're all in that kind of desperate sphere, but I think it's those of us who can rise above the desperation and see the big picture in that there's enough to go around for everybody. Let's get everybody a little piece of the pie, and we will all grow. That's a tough thing for people to kind of roll over on because everybody has to be invested in their own personal success. You've got a writing partner, so already you're sharing the responsibilities of what you do and the creation of your art. Have you thought about, or are you doing any kind of outreach to kind of help maybe new people, young people, kids, get to the point where they could be like you? I mean, I know one of the things that you did was by reviewing things that other people didn't review, you actually gave people a leg up and gave them visibility that they wouldn't have had otherwise. What other kinds of things do you see in your future to kind of help people get that going. Help people understand that, they're not alone out there as much as they may feel it.
One thing I do is I try to be a helping hand, just like I've had people help me. Like I've had a lot of help over the years. I'm pretty sure I have a lot of contacts that when I do get to a point where I feel like I'm ready for the type of advice that they have mastered, that I can ask them, and they will let me know. They'll clue me in on the things that I can receive in terms of being able to apply, their teachings to what I'm doing writing-wise. And since I have those avenues open to me, and I've had them open to me in the past, I try to be the same conduit for people who maybe are not as well versed in the book industry, or maybe not as not fully confident in their writing skills, or maybe just need a little guidance. And for some people, like I have one of my close friends, he's a poet, and we go through his poetry, and we have some upcoming writing sessions that we have planned out that we're going to really kick it into high gear in terms of his creative output. I am a writing mentor for a young woman that has a great book idea. I'm not going to give away her story idea right now, but one thing that I really like about our experience in terms of writing is that she approached me one day and she was just like, "Hey, will you be my writing mentor?" And when she asked me, I'm just like, it's a ton more better, people. There are many more better options than me in terms of being a writing mentor. I mean, I can do it for you, but it's some people that you can ask, and I'm pretty sure will give you some much better information. Not that I would give her bad information, but there's some people that are more experienced. And she was just like, no, like I look at the way that you approach literature, and look at certain things that you do, and can I just pitch this idea to you? And as I'm creating this story, can you give me some insight on how to do things better? And I've been very open, good, bad, and sometimes I guess indifferent about some of the stuff that's been written, but always being realistic. And one thing that I really like about that process and helping her along from having an idea to actually getting to publication is that her story is like getting close to 60,000 words. The goal is 80,000 words. And for me, I've never written anything that long. So for her to, so I'm sitting there like, once she got past like 10,000, I was just like, oh my, this is getting interesting, But to actually see somebody do something like that and actually be like on the ground level of their creativity, and being an encourager. I've had a lot of people encourage me in one way or another, and I try to be the same for other people who are, they're trying to get their ideas off the ground. They're trying to stay consistent, have the confidence to actually see things through to the end. And sometimes all they need is just a positive word or a realistic perspective on where they are in their creative process, and maybe just giving them some unabashed advice. Like just really say, like, if I were you in this particular situation, or what you presented me, this is what I would do, and this is why. Thinking long term in terms of something that you will be able to maintain if you try to apply it. So for me, I try to be a helping hand here and there. People ask me different questions all the time. I get approached to read short passages of stories just to, give my impressions or see if it works or not. Like, well, what do you think happened? And then I explain it like, nah, that's not what I was trying to say, but, I need to go back to the drawing board. I do that for people because I know what it feels like when you do ask somebody who you think will give you some good information a question, and they end up like giving you the cold shoulder or giving you the answer.
Off.
Yeah. Or give you an answer that is not accurate, but it's just something to say what you said. It was something to kind of get you in and get you out to blow you off. So that's what I do. I try to be the main thing I try to do that I can do for most people in a very easy way is to try to be a consistent encourager. If you're a writer, if you're a creator, a creative, and you have something going on, and there's something I can do, say an encouraging word, I do that because I know it goes a long way with me, and I would expect it to do the same for others.
And there you have it. I mean, at the very beginning, you said you like the company of like-minded people, like-minded creators, and I think that there's a very useful and exciting synergy that you can get from other people. I mean, just to have other people excited and say, that sounds great. What you're doing, do that thing because it sounds like it's going to be interesting. We all want validation. We all want a measure of external, not devotion, but external kind of forgetting the word because I'm old, but external proof of self-worth.
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially if you're new and you're not quite sure. And like what you said, well, you could tell them, okay, this is good, but let me, in my opinion, maybe you should take a left turn here and not go that way because it may not help. Or how about, I mean, we just helped out, a bunch of us just helped out somebody with his manuscript and said, let's, instead of writing it so highly stylized, let's use go back to the fundamentals of writing and try this out and see how the story, and I think that the value that we bring to other people is just letting them know that they're part of a community of people who are trying to do some pretty cool things, and the people that I have the most trouble with are the selfish ones who still treat everything they do as a zero-sum game. And if they're an author and I sell a book, and they feel like I just took, $20 out of their pocket because I sold a book and they didn't. I have a hard time with those people because you have to question what their ultimate value system is. Are you that selfish? It's almost like you're running for president as a Republican. Oh, did I say that? I am so sorry. but you know what I'm saying. So the fraternity of writers is pretty cool. I'm going to have a report for you guys. Actually, I don't know. I might even do a Friday night show in August, the Friday night show from Mid-American, because this is easy to do. And I'm not sure who I'm going to be able to get. If I can get some pretty badass authors, black, white, or otherwise, I think it'd be worth doing the show, being able to do it live. We're running down to about 6 minutes, and because we missed a show, and we haven't heard from Jarvis lately, I'd like him to wake up. If somebody's at his house, wake him up and see if he will come, and he can tell us a little bit about some of the things that are going to be happening during the summer, the convention that he just attended. And I think that it would be worth it to hear where the Earth Squadron movie is, because he's still steadily moving forward. And I'll just keep talking. You and I can keep talking until he jumps on. He's not used to us giving him this much time. William likes to put me on the spot. What's that, dude?
I was actually at the same conference and same convention that he went to last weekend, and it was actually it was a very great experience. One thing that I really liked about it was the recurrent thing with a lot of other vendors there that they had been working on their craft for a number of years, and most of them were 10 years or more, doing the same thing and keep pushing forward in it. And one guy, I have some of the video footage on my YouTube channel, but one guy, he was talking about how he had created one of his characters when he was in his 4th grade, and overall he'd been working on some of his comic book projects for over 20 years. And being that consistent and being that dedicated to it, and seeing a lot of other people that were extremely passionate about some of the stuff that they were into, some of the stuff they were trying to produce, and then also seeing, like, the number of years. And, they had to go through all kinds of hills and valleys and ups and downs and starts and stops that whole time. But here they are still pushing forward and still trying, waiting for that proverbial lightning strike that you was talking about earlier.
Well, and the other thing is some people are just geared toward pushing forward whatever whatever their creative bent is, because that's who they are, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like Billy Crystal said in Throw Money from the Train, you know, a writer writes, you know, an artist paints or sculpts or whatever. You know, someone who's doing, you know, like the Body Jumpers guys, you know, they're doing all of those episodes probably, and my feeling is, I didn't want to delve too deeply. Nobody's getting paid big money for that, but they're doing it. They've got a whole series, and they keep doing it for the love of the game, you know, and that's something that we don't always get to talk about, because yes, there is a financial incentive, and yes, there is, you know, the hope that, you know, I hope one day I will have the luxury of being able to stay home and live off of my writing, and not because of anything other than the fact that I love to write. I love to write. I've got 4 more books that I have to write, you know, that I you know, to finish out a series. And so it would be great if I didn't have to get up, you know, certain mornings and put on some, you know, work appropriate clothes, go someplace else and do things that I don't care for as much as I do my writing. So, you know, those are the kind of dreams that I have. I mean, I don't know if you're at that point now. Are you self-sufficient in your writing?
No, not yet, but that's the goal.
No, see, very few of us are.
Yeah.
Very few of us are.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Oh,
I know it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of tweaks.
Somebody woke Jarvis up. Jarvis, why don't you give us your summary about how the convention was last week? And I assume you two met up at the convention, right?
First of all, I wasn't asleep.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize if I mischaracterized you. No, I was just kidding.
Eating pizza. But actually, Joey and Quasi rode down with me to Atlanta to the Urban IndieCon, and we met up with Chastity and Tanya down there. And so it was just awesome. I can't stress enough that we need to support types of events, because they are the distribution points that we always say, well, we have these black products and things of that nature, but we don't have a distribution network. Yes, we do. It's not going to come to you, though. You're going to have to put some work in and actually attend the events. Each of the events, they serve several purposes. One, you can sell your wares to a captive audience that have money in hand, that are looking for what you're selling. And then also, it's a good opportunity to network. I had the opportunity to meet a bunch of people that I've seen before and touch base with, meet some new people. Then also, there are excellent cultural events, too. It's, people are selling anything from T-shirts to books to art. And someone was even there selling walking sticks, these custom-made carved walking sticks. So you run into all types of different things at these events. And so, like I said, I encourage everybody to if you haven't been to one of the black cons, make a point to go to them because of those points that I just mentioned. A couple of other things we're going to have coming down the pipe. As we speak, Garrett is putting the final touches on the re-edited Genesis Book 1, the anthology. It still has two dozen stories. We're going to have a nice new cover to match the artwork on Book 2. And then near the end of the summer, it will be on Amazon. And then we're going to also re-release Book 2 on Amazon. None of these books have been on Amazon before, so I'm going to make a point to get them on there. Because that's a big selling point and place where people attend, well, not so much as attend, but frequent to buy books. Also, Earth Squadron. I'm happy to say we're moving into the voiceover stage of doing the Earth Squadron 3D action film. We, of course, have the script done, the storyboards done, the characters done. Actually, one got re-edited this week, so it's kind of on the fly. We have the location and everything, the bios for each character, and I've been in contact with all of the voice actors and actresses regarding who their parts are and things of that nature. So we're getting their parts to them to be read and recorded. So the next stage, right after the recording phase, will be the actual animation. And so things have changed and progressed over the course of the production cycle. So we're actually having to update one of our computers to handle the new software to do the film. But I'm really excited about it.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, that's more than pretty good. So when do you think we might see the debut of Earth Squadron? Do you have a target date for release yet?
We're looking at next fall, and that way we will have time to put in all the special effects, take our time doing the project, doing the animation portion, put the special effects in there so it's really polished, and also enough time to market it so that when it does drop, people have had that anticipation and it's on people's minds rather than, oh, what is this? Did you say what? Earth what? People know that it's out there and be looking for it.
Sure. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I want to thank Joey Pinkney for being our special guest today, man. This was great. I love the conversation. Hang on after the show ends so we, if anybody has any PG-13 or higher questions, we can answer those offline. And Jarvis, as usual, man, you're out there working the work, making it happen. And I want to. And of course, I want to thank everybody who listens live and picks us up as a podcast. I apologize for my voice. I'm, just getting out over something, but it's been a great 2-hour conversation. Let me ask you, Joey, was it hard? Was it easy? What was it?
It was a little bit in between. It was more easy than hard, though. I would say that.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
All right, and on behalf of everybody who helps make this happen, I want to wish everybody a good weekend ahead or a good day ahead or whatever the hell it is when you're listening to this. And we'll be back next Friday with another guest on the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com site. And on behalf of everybody else, this is William Hayashi saying thank you very much for listening.
Yay, thanks, everybody. You all are terrific. We appreciate you.
Thank you.